So this is going to be a repair or replacement of the pedal assist magnet sensor for the VoltBike Urban. And the tools you're going to need to do this are going to be an 8mm Allen key to remove the crank bolt, and you're going to need a large crescent wrench and a crank puller to remove the left-hand side crank arm. So the first step is to remove the 8mm crank bolt, and we do that using a 8mm Allen key. So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, so we're going to turn left. And we just remove the bolt. So step 2 is going to be to remove the non-drive side crank arm, and we're going to do that using our crank puller and our large crescent wrench. You can also just use a 15mm box wrench. So we need to back the crank puller off and then thread it into the crank arm. It's going to be a regular thread, right hand regular thread. So once you've got it in a little ways, you need to take the crescent wrench, and this is important, you need to make sure that the crank puller is securely fixed into the crank arm. Once you're sure that it's securely in the crank arm, then you can begin to wind in the shaft of the crank puller until it engages the axle. You'll feel that it will become firm once it's hit the axle. Then you're going to need to take your large crescent wrench and begin to turn the crank puller, and you should then feel the crank arm loosen off and disengage from the axle. If for some reason it becomes very hard to turn, maybe your crank puller isn't in properly, you shouldn't have to force it. It should be firm, but you shouldn't have to force it. And there's the crank arms come off, and then I'll just remove the puller from the arm. So step 3 is to remove the pedal assist sensor. We basically can just grab hold of it, give it a little bit of a wiggle. Without forcing it, you should be able to just work it off slowly, and it will come off the square taper bottom bracket axle that's fixed inside the frame. So on the back side here, you can actually see the inside mechanism that will rotate, and you can see the wheel begin to move. So that's what will activate the pedal assist. So over time, some pedal assist sensors may become slightly worn or loose. To ensure that they are properly engaged to the axle and activate the pedal assist, a shim may need to be installed. Usually electrical tape or plastic packing tape can be used to make a shim on the inside of the pedal assist sensor to ensure it gets a nice snug fit on the axle, so that the inside ring of the pedal assist sensor spins as it should. Once the tape's installed, just slightly press it on, back onto the spindle, and ensure that it's fixed securely in place. So the final step is to reinstall the non-drive side crank arm. Just orientate the square taper properly. Press the crank arm on by hand. Grease your bolt. Make sure the threads are greased. And then using your 8mm Allen key, you can just turn clockwise. And then tighten it so it's nice and tight, It will not come to a hard stop, but just tighten till it feels secure. After about 24 hours of riding time, it's always a good idea to recheck that crank bolt.